I'm Madison, 27, the founder of secure tech solutions that I built from nothing into a multi-million-dollar company. Today I'm attending my younger brother Tyler's college graduation, a day that should be filled with pride. Instead, my stomach churns with anxiety. My family has always treated my accomplishments like footnotes while celebrating Tyler's every move. This time is different though. I brought James, my executive assistant and bodyguard. I'm tired of being invisible in my own family. Before I dive into what happened today, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, hit that like button, and subscribe to hear more stories about standing up for yourself when it matters most. Growing up in our middle-class neighborhood in Boston, it became clear early on that my parents, Eleanor and Richard Taylor, had chosen their favorite. It wasn't me. Our family photo albums tell the story better than words, endless pictures of Tyler's baseball games, school plays, and award ceremonies. If you look carefully, you might spot me in the background, usually with a book or laptop. My fascination with computers started when I was 11. While my parents drove Tyler to baseball practice 6 days a week, I taught myself basic programming languages using our family's outdated desktop computer. By 13, I was creating simple apps and fixing neighbors' computer problems for pocket money. Mom and Dad barely noticed. They were too busy cheering from the bleachers as Tyler pitched his way to regional championships. Madison, not now, became my mother's catchphrase whenever I tried sharing my latest coding breakthrough. My excitement about building my first website was met with distracted nods while they fussed over Tyler's B+ in English. It wasn't that they were cruel parents. They just had their spotlight permanently fixed on my brother. High school graduation should have been my moment. I was valedictorian with a full scholarship to MIT. During my speech, I looked out at the audience to see my father scrolling through his phone, and my mother adjusting Tyler's freshman baseball scholarship announcement for their social media page. At the family celebration afterward, relatives kept asking about Tyler's prospects, while congratulating me with vague comments like, "Smart girl, just like your mother." Mom never worked in tech. She was a part-time librarian. College became my escape. I worked 3 jobs: campus tech support, weekend retail, and midnight shifts at a 24-hour diner, to cover living expenses since my parents' financial support went primarily to Tyler's needs. Their justification was always that his athletic equipment was expensive, and besides, I had a scholarship. They conveniently overlooked that my scholarship covered tuition only, not housing, books, or food. Christmas breaks were particularly telling. Tyler's side of the tree overflowed with carefully selected gifts, while I typically received practical items like socks or gift cards to office supply stores. One year, I spent months designing a custom website for my parents' anniversary, featuring digitized family photos and videos. They thanked me briefly before gushing over Tyler's gift, a store-bought card with a baseball metaphor about love going the distance. I don't blame Tyler entirely. He grew up in the glow of our parents' attention, accepting it as normal. Our relationship has always been cordial but distant. We existed in parallel worlds, his filled with team sports, popularity, and family support, mine with computers, solitude, and determination. While he received constant affirmation, I learned to validate myself. Family gatherings became exercises in invisibility. Aunt Caroline would ask Tyler detailed questions about his latest game, while asking me vague questions like, "Still doing that computer thing?" Uncle James would slip Tyler $20 bills, for a hard-working young man, while telling me to keep studying hard. Holidays were filled with relatives watching Tyler's game recordings while I helped in the kitchen, or retreated to my room to work on coding projects. During my sophomore year at MIT, I developed a security application that caught the attention of a small tech firm. The day I called home to share the news that they wanted to license it, my mother cut the conversation short, because they were heading to Tyler's baseball banquet. That night changed something in me. I stopped seeking their approval and channeled all my energy into building something they couldn't ignore. I graduated summa cum laude from MIT. My parents attended the ceremony, but left immediately after to make it to Tyler's summer league game. I didn't go home with them. Instead, I moved into a tiny studio apartment in Boston with nothing but my laptop, a futon, and an unshakable determination to succeed on my own terms. The tech industry wasn't exactly rolling out the red carpet for a young woman with no connections and limited resources. My tiny apartment became my headquarters, with a folding table serving as my desk and empty ramen cups marking my late-night coding sessions. I started SecureTech Solutions with $5,000, my entire savings, and a revolutionary idea for encrypted communication software that I'd been developing since college. The first year was brutal. I survived on instant noodles and coffee, coding 20 hours a day, and sleeping under my desk when exhaustion won out. Potential investors would schedule meetings, then talk over me or suggest I bring on a male co-founder to handle the business side. One venture capitalist patted my hand and suggested I try developing something simpler, like a fashion app. I left that meeting and landed my first client that same afternoon, a small law firm needing secure communications. You understand what we need better than companies 10 times your size, the firm's IT director told me. That first contract barely covered my expenses, but it gave me something more valuable, validation that my technology worked. I leveraged that success to land 3 more clients, then 10, then 20. My breakthrough came 18 months after founding the company. A major financial institution experienced a devastating data breach. Their security team had attended a conference where I'd presented my encryption protocol. Within hours of their breach, my phone rang. 2 days later, I was presenting my solution to their board of directors. The contract they offered changed everything. That's when I hired James. He started as my executive assistant. I needed someone to handle logistics while I focused on development and client relationships. James had a unique background, former military intelligence with an MBA. He understood both security and business, making him invaluable as the company expanded. When we started receiving government contracts with classified materials, his role evolved to include security oversight. As my public profile grew, he naturally transitioned to serving as my bodyguard at high-profile events. The company expanded rapidly over the next 3 years. We moved from my apartment to a small office, then to an entire floor in a downtown high-rise. I hired brilliant people who shared my vision and values. Our client list grew to include Fortune 500 companies, government agencies, and international organizations. Financial success followed, first millions, then tens of millions in revenue. Last year, we cleared $87 million. Industry recognition came in waves. Fast Company named me to their most innovative under 30 list. Forbes featured me in their Technology Transformers issue. I was invited to speak at cybersecurity conferences alongside people I'd once idolized. The Wall Street Journal ran a profile calling me the future of digital security. My authentication protocol became an industry standard, taught in computer science programs nationwide. As the company grew, so did my commitment to creating opportunities for others like me. I established the SecureTech Scholarship for young women in STEM, funding full rides for 10 students annually. Our internship program specifically recruited from underrepresented groups. I launched a mentorship initiative connecting girls interested in tech with women professionals. These programs became as important to me as our business objectives. Through it all, my family remained strangely disconnected from my success. I sent them articles when I was featured in major publications. My mother would respond with brief texts like "nice picture," without commenting on the actual achievement. My father once called after a television interview, not to congratulate me, but to ask if I could help Tyler with his resume. I still sent Christmas gifts, attended occasional family events, and made obligatory birthday calls, but the emotional distance widened with each ignored accomplishment. The professional respect I'd earned stood in stark contrast to my family's indifference. CEOs of major corporations sought my advice. Government officials consulted me on cybersecurity policy. Aspiring entrepreneurs asked me to mentor them. Yet whenever I visited my parents' home, I reverted to being just Madison, Tyler's sister, as if my entire career existed in some parallel universe they couldn't see. Despite outward success, private loneliness became my constant companion. I built meaningful professional relationships, but struggled with trusting people enough for genuine friendship. James became one of the few people who knew both sides of my life, the celebrated entrepreneur and the perpetually overlooked daughter. He witnessed the contrast between how the world treated me and how my family did. His loyalty wasn't just professional, he became the closest thing to family I had. "They'll realize what they've been missing eventually," he told me once after a particularly disappointing phone call with my mother, who had spent 15 minutes talking about Tyler's new coaching position without asking a single question about my recent industry leadership award. I wasn't so sure. But I kept trying, sending updates, sharing milestones, making brief visits home. Each time hoping for the recognition that never came, each time leaving with the same hollow feeling that in the eyes of the people who should care most, my success simply didn't matter. The embossed invitation arrived on a Tuesday morning in May. Tyler's master's degree graduation ceremony at Boston University, a significant achievement worthy of celebration. I held the heavy cardstock, tracing my fingers over the raised lettering while conflicting emotions battled within me. Pride in my brother's accomplishment. Dread at another family gathering where I'd feel like an outsider. Hope that maybe this time would be different. James placed my morning coffee beside me as I stared at the invitation. "Another family event?" he asked, noticing my expression. "Tyler's finishing his master's," I replied, setting the invitation on my desk. "Graduation's in 3 weeks. Will you go?" His question was gentle, free of judgment. James had witnessed enough awkward phone calls and disappointing visits to understand my hesitation. I didn't answer immediately. My last family gathering had been Thanksgiving 6 months earlier, a 4-hour ordeal where my parents had fawned over Tyler's new position as assistant baseball coach, while barely acknowledging the fact that my company had just secured a major government contract. I'd left early, making an excuse about an emergency at work. That evening, I called my mother to RSVP. "Madison. I was just about to call you," she answered, her voice bright with excitement. Before I could respond, she continued, "Did you get Tyler's invitation? He's been working so hard for this degree. The dean personally told him his thesis was one of the best they've seen in years. We're just bursting with pride." "That's great, Mom," I said, waiting for a pause to mention that I'd be attending. "Your father is planning a big dinner after the ceremony. Tyler's invited some of his professors." "Oh, and did I mention he's been offered a position at the university? Assistant Director of Athletic Development. He hasn't decided yet, but what an opportunity." I waited through another 5 minutes of Tyler updates before she finally asked, "So what's new with you? Still busy with your computer business?" Computer business? As if I ran a small repair shop, instead of a cybersecurity firm, protecting critical national infrastructure. I swallowed my frustration, and simply confirmed I'd attend the graduation. "That's nice, dear. Will you be coming alone?" The question carried an undercurrent I'd heard before, her perpetual concern about my single status, as if my professional success was merely a consolation prize for not having found a husband. Actually, I'll be bringing my assistant James. We have meetings in Boston that week. It wasn't entirely true. I had no scheduled meetings yet, but I couldn't face another family event without Ally. Oh? Her disappointment was evident. Well, I suppose we can make room. I'll have to rearrange the seating chart for the dinner. After hanging up, I sat in my office staring at the Boston skyline through the floor-to-ceiling windows. My company occupied the top 3 floors of this building. I employed over 200 people. Our technology protected millions of users worldwide. Yet to my mother, I was still just Madison, who needed to settle down and stop playing with computers. The next day, I threw myself into preparation for the trip. I spent 3 hours with my personal shopper selecting the perfect outfit. A designer dress that projected confidence without seeming like I was trying too hard. I chose a graduation gift for Tyler that struck the right balance, expensive enough to reflect my success, but not so extravagant it would seem like showing off. A limited edition watch from a craftsman in Switzerland, classically styled with subtle technological features, I knew he'd appreciate. James helped me rearrange my schedule, moving board meetings and client presentations to accommodate the trip. We booked first-class flights to Boston and reserved the presidential suite at the Four Seasons rather than staying at my parents' house. If I was going to subject myself to another disappointing family event, I would at least have a luxurious retreat afterward. The night before our departure, James found me in my office long after everyone else had gone home. I was staring at old family photos on my computer, Tyler's high school graduation, my parents beaming beside him while I stood slightly apart. "You know," James said, setting a cup of tea beside me, "you don't have to go." "Yes, I do," I replied, closing the photo files. "He's still my brother." "Then go as who you are now, not who they think you are." His words stayed with me as I packed that night, carefully selecting items that represented the woman I'd become, not the invisible daughter still seeking approval. On the flight to Boston, I rehearsed conversations in my mind, imagining scenarios where I calmly addressed years of neglect. But each mental script ended the same way, with dismissal, defensiveness, or worst of all, indifference. By the time our plane touched down, I'd abandoned these imaginary confrontations in favor of a simpler strategy. I would attend, be cordial, support Tyler, and protect myself from expecting anything more than what my family had always given me, polite disinterest. "Ready?" James asked as our car approached my parents' suburban home for the pre-ceremony family gathering. I nodded, though we both knew I wasn't. But sometimes the only way forward is through the fire, even when you know you'll get burned. Our driver pulled up to my parents' colonial-style home at precisely 6:30 p.m. The house looked exactly as it had during my childhood, meticulously maintained with my mother's prized hydrangeas flanking the front walkway. Several cars already lined the driveway, signaling that other family members had arrived before us. "Remember," James said quietly as we approached the front door, "you run a company valued at over $500 million. You've changed the face of cybersecurity. You belong in any room you enter." I appreciated his pep talk, but knew that in this particular house, my professional accomplishments might as well exist in another dimension. I smoothed my designer dress, took a deep breath, and rang the doorbell. My father opened the door, his expression shifting from welcoming to slightly confused when he registered my presence. "Madison. You made it." His eyes moved to James, standing slightly behind me. "And you brought a friend." "This is James Wilson, my executive assistant," I said, stepping inside. "James, this is my father, Richard Taylor." James extended his hand with a warm smile. "Pleasure to meet you, sir. Madison speaks highly of your family." My father shook James's hand briefly, his attention already drifting back toward the living room where voices and laughter spilled out. Everyone's already here. Tyler's showing pictures from his research symposium. We followed him into the living room, where about 15 relatives were clustered around Tyler. My brother stood in the center, animated as he described something on his tablet to our enraptured family members. My mother circulated with a tray of hors d'oeuvres, beaming with maternal pride. Madison's here, my father announced without much enthusiasm. A few heads turned briefly in acknowledgement, before returning their attention to Tyler. My mother approached, kissing my cheek. "You look nice, dear." "Very professional." Her gaze shifted to James with obvious curiosity. "And who's this?" I repeated the introduction, while she assessed him with the keen eye of a mother perpetually on the lookout for her daughter's potential suitors. "Well, any friend of Madison's is welcome. There are drinks in the kitchen. Tyler's just telling everyone about his thesis presentation." She hurried back to Tyler's side without waiting for our response. James raised an eyebrow at me, and I gave him a small shrug that said, "See what I mean?" We made our way to the kitchen, where my Aunt Patricia was arranging cheese on a platter. She looked up and seemed genuinely pleased to see me. "Madison. It's been ages." She hugged me warmly before giving James an appraising look. "And who might this handsome gentleman be?" Before I could correct her assumption, she continued in a stage whisper, "About time you brought someone home. Your mother was beginning to think you'd be married to that computer job forever." "James works with me, Aunt Patricia," I clarified. "He's my executive assistant and security chief." "You have a security chief?" She looked bewildered. "For that little website business." James intervened smoothly. "Ms. Taylor's company provides cybersecurity for several Fortune 100 companies and government agencies. It's hardly little." "Oh. Well, isn't that interesting?" Her tone suggested it was anything but. "Tyler's been offered an assistant directorship at the university, you know. At his age. Your parents are so proud." I forced a smile. "Yes, I heard. That's wonderful for him." Throughout the next hour, the pattern repeated with various relatives. My cousin Derek asked if I still played with computers, while telling me about his new job as a middle school gym teacher. Uncle Stuart asked if my internet business was still staying afloat, before launching into a detailed account of Tyler's baseball coaching achievements. My grandmother patted my hand and told me not to worry. I'd find a nice man soon, despite my unusual career. Not once did anyone ask about my company, my achievements, or my life. When I mentioned being featured in Business Insider last month, my mother nodded distractedly before exclaiming, "Oh. I need to show everyone the article about Tyler in the alumni newsletter." James remained professionally pleasant, but I could see his growing bewilderment at how my family treated me. When we stepped into the hallway for a moment of respite, he whispered, "Is it always like this?" "Actually, they are being unusually attentive to me today," I replied with a grim smile. The dinner that followed was an exercise in invisibility. I was seated at the far end of the table, separated from my parents and Tyler, who sat with his fiancée Rachel, a woman I was meeting for the first time. James was placed even further away, next to distant relatives, who kept asking if he was Madison's boyfriend, despite repeated clarifications. My mother had prepared Tyler's favorite foods, including the special maple-glazed salmon she used to make for his birthdays. The conversation revolved entirely around Tyler's degree, his job offer, and his upcoming wedding. When I tried to join a discussion about current events, my father redirected the conversation to how Tyler's sports psychology studies gave him unique insights into teamwork and leadership. The final blow came when my mother brought out the family photo albums, not to show James our family history, but to pass around Tyler's athletic achievements through the years. As the album circulated, I noticed something I'd never seen before, a sleek leather portfolio labeled Tyler's Accomplishments, filled with newspaper clippings, certificates, and ribbons meticulously preserved. "Mom, did you keep a similar album of Madison's achievements?" Rachel asked innocently, earning her the first genuinely warm feeling I'd had toward her. My mother looked momentarily flustered. "Oh, well, Madison was always so independent. And her interests were more solitary." She waved vaguely. "Computers and such." I excused myself to use the restroom, needing a moment alone. In the hallway, I passed the family photo wall I'd seen countless times before. But tonight, something caught my eye that I'd somehow overlooked, or perhaps subconsciously avoided seeing. Among dozens of framed photographs of Tyler throughout his life, there were exactly 3 that included me. My high school graduation, where I was partially cut off at the edge of the frame, a childhood Christmas, where I was opening a gift in the background, while Tyler commanded center stage, and my parents' 25th anniversary, where I stood awkwardly among extended family. I stared at this visual confirmation of my lifetime of invisibility, feeling an odd sense of clarity. This wasn't just in my head. It wasn't my imagination, or oversensitivity. The evidence was literally hanging on the wall. When I returned to the dining room, I found James engaged in conversation with my brother while others listened in. For a moment, I felt a stab of betrayal. Had even James fallen under Tyler's spell, until I heard what he was saying. Truly impressive how she built the algorithm from scratch. The Pentagon called it revolutionary. But Madison's most proud of her scholarship foundation, I think. Putting 37 young women through college fully funded last year alone. Tyler looked genuinely interested. I had no idea Madison was doing all that. She's never mentioned it. I approached just as my father interjected, "Well, she's always been private about her little projects." James caught my eye across the room, his expression a mixture of disbelief and carefully controlled indignation on my behalf. In that moment, I felt profoundly grateful for his presence, the one person in the room who actually saw me. As the evening finally wound down, I found myself mentally counting the hours until tomorrow's graduation ceremony would be over, and we could return to the sanctuary of our hotel. The realization hit me with unexpected force. I was dreading my brother's graduation, not out of jealousy for the attention he would receive, but because of the pain of being erased within my own family, of having my existence minimized to make more room for his. James and I left shortly after dessert, citing an early morning conference call before the graduation ceremony. As we waited for our car, Tyler approached us in the driveway. "Thanks for coming, Maddie," he said, using my childhood nickname. "It means a lot." I offered a sincere smile. "I wouldn't miss it. I'm proud of you." He hesitated, then added, "Your assistant was telling me about your company. Sounds like you're doing really amazing things." "She is," James confirmed before I could downplay it. "Your sister is quite remarkable." Tyler looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read, curiosity mixed with something else. Surprise. Confusion. "We should catch up sometime." "Really catch up, I mean." "I'd like that," I replied, not entirely sure if I meant it. As our car pulled away from my childhood home, James broke the silence. "Now I understand." I didn't need to ask what he meant. He had witnessed firsthand what I'd tried to explain for years, how a family could simultaneously love you and make you disappear. Morning light streamed through the hotel suite's windows as I stood before the full-length mirror, assessing my appearance with clinical detachment. I'd chosen a tailored navy blue dress that projected quiet confidence, professional without being flashy. My jewelry was minimal but expensive, hair styled in a sleek chignon, that would not be out of place in any boardroom across America. Going for the CEO look today, I see, James commented, adjusting his tie as he entered the room. Just being myself, I replied, though we both knew that wasn't entirely true. I was armoring up, dressing for the battlefield of family dynamics, where I'd always been outflanked. James approached, standing behind me in the mirror. Madison, remember something today. Your worth isn't determined by their recognition of it. Intellectually, I know that. I sighed, applying a final touch of lipstick. Emotionally, we all want our parents' approval. It's hardwired. He squeezed my shoulder briefly. But sometimes the family we build matters more than the family we're born into. His words stayed with me during the silent car ride to Boston University's campus. The auditorium was already filling with proud families when we arrived. I spotted my parents immediately, my mother in a floral dress she'd likely purchased specifically for this occasion, my father uncomfortably tugging at his tie. Madison, over here. My mother waved enthusiastically, as if I might have trouble locating them in the crowd. We approached, and I noticed their smiles falter slightly when they saw James beside me. We saved seats in the family section, my father said, gesturing to a row where various aunts, uncles, and cousins were already settled. Thank you, I replied, moving toward the indicated row. James followed naturally. My mother touched his arm. Oh, I'm sorry, these seats are really just for family. I'm sure you understand. Before I could respond, my father added, there are plenty of seats further back for friends. I felt a familiar tightness in my chest, the same constriction I'd experienced at countless family gatherings where my place in the hierarchy had been made abundantly clear. But this time, something different happened. James stays with me, I said, my voice quiet but firm. But your Aunt Caroline and Uncle Stuart just drove 3 hours to be here, and they need to sit with us, my mother persisted. Surely your assistant won't mind finding another seat. This is Tyler's special day, Madison. Let's not make things difficult. I looked past her to the row where my relatives sat today. Indeed, there were 2 empty seats separated by several people, one presumably for me, and another far down the row. They had no intention of even letting us sit together. We'll find our own seats, I said, turning away before they could see the hurt in my eyes. James and I found places about 10 rows back, still with a good view of the stage, but clearly separate from the family section. As we settled in, I noticed my cousins arriving late being eagerly ushered into the family row while glances were thrown in my direction, the clear message that even latecomers, with marginal family connections, outranked me and my guest. The ceremony began with typical academic pageantry, faculty in colorful regalia, the processional of graduates, welcome speeches from university administrators. I watched with genuine pride as Tyler's department was called, seeing my brother walk across the stage to receive his diploma with honors. Despite everything, I felt a surge of admiration for his accomplishment. The dean's commencement speech centered on success and family support. Behind every graduate here today stands a network of support, parents who believed, siblings who encouraged, families who sacrificed, he proclaimed. Success is never a solo achievement. Each word felt like a personal indictment. Where had my support network been when I was teaching myself coding from library books? When I was working 3 jobs to support myself through college? When I was sleeping on an office floor trying to launch my company? The success I'd built had been entirely of my own making, without the scaffolding of family encouragement the dean described as universal. After the ceremony, graduates and families spilled into the courtyard for photographs and congratulations. I watched as my parents enveloped Tyler in embraces, their faces radiant with pride. I approached, gift box in hand, waiting for an appropriate moment to offer my congratulations. Dr. Tyler Taylor, my father boomed, clapping my brother on the back. I always knew you had greatness in you, son. Always knew it. We are just bursting with pride, my mother added, straightening Tyler's graduation cap. The first doctorate in the family. I stepped forward, extending the carefully wrapped gift. Congratulations, Tyler. You've worked hard for this. Oh, Madison, there you are, my mother said, as if I'd been deliberately hiding rather than standing 3 feet away. Get in the picture, quickly. Your father's colleague wants to meet Tyler. Before I could respond, I was hastily positioned beside Tyler for a photograph, then immediately displaced as an older man approached. My father beamed, introducing the man as Dr. Harrison, head of the university's athletic department. And this is my son, Tyler, the successful one in the family, my father said with a laugh. Just completed his doctorate in sports psychology. Already has job offers lining up. The words hit like a physical blow. The successful one in the family. As if there could be only one. As if my achievements weren't even worthy of mention. I stood frozen, the gift still in my hands, as Tyler shook hands with the department head. James, who had been standing discreetly nearby, moved closer, his expression concerned. Madison, he asked quietly. I handed him the gift box. Please make sure Tyler gets this. I need some air. Without waiting for response, I walked away from the family group, moving through crowds of celebrating graduates, until I found myself in an empty hallway of the academic building. I leaned against the wall, drawing deep breaths to steady myself, fighting back tears that threatened to spill. My phone buzzed, a series of notifications about a potential security breach with a major client. Real problems in the real world where I actually mattered. I welcomed the distraction, responding to emails and messaging my security team with instructions. This was my domain, where my words carried weight, where my expertise was valued. As I worked, a clarity began to emerge from the emotional fog. I had spent years seeking validation from people fundamentally incapable of giving it. My family would never see me, not because of my failings, but because of their limitations. The realization didn't eliminate the pain, but it reframed it. I stood at a crossroads. I could leave now, return to the hotel, and fly back to my real life, cutting short this exercise in futility. Or I could return to the courtyard and continue the charade for another few hours. Neither option felt right. There was a third path, one I'd never taken before. I could stay, not as the invisible daughter seeking approval, but as the woman I'd become. I could claim my space without apology. My phone buzzed again, a text from James. Your parents looking for you. Reception starting. What do you want me to tell them? I typed back, tell them I'm coming. The university's reception hall hummed with celebration, graduates in their regalia mingling with proud families, faculty members circulating with congratulatory handshakes, photographers capturing the momentous occasion. I paused in the doorway, observing the scene before entering. Near the center stood Tyler, surrounded by admirers, my parents flanking him like proud sentinels. James approached from where he'd been waiting. Are you all right? No, I replied honestly. But I'm done pretending to be. I crossed the room toward my family, shoulders back, stride purposeful, the same walk I used entering boardrooms and delivering keynote speeches. Tyler noticed me first, raising his hand in a small wave. My parents turned, my mother's expression shifting to relief. There you are, she exclaimed. We've been looking everywhere. Where did you disappear to? Tyler's about to give the gift to his advisor. I had a work situation to handle, I explained, reaching them. A security breach attempt at one of our government facilities. My father barely glanced my way. Well, you're here now. Tyler's advisor is coming over. He's the one who recommended Tyler for the assistant directorship. I nodded, stepping slightly to the side as an older man approached. My father immediately launched into effusive introductions while I watched the familiar pattern unfold, Tyler-centered, celebrated, while I was rendered peripheral, unnecessary. When the conversation shifted to Tyler's new position, I tried to engage. The athletic development role sounds fascinating, Tyler. Will you be implementing any of your research findings? Before my brother could answer, my mother interjected, "Oh, Madison, you wouldn't understand all the technical aspects of Tyler's work. It's quite advanced." The irony of her statement, dismissing the technical comprehension of someone who had built enterprise-level security systems protecting nuclear facilities, might have been comical in another context. Instead, it was the final stone in a lifetime of dismissals. "Actually, Mom, I understand technical complexity quite well," I said, my voice steady despite the emotion building behind it. "It's the foundation of my entire career." Yes, your computer business," my father said dismissively. "But this is Tyler's day, Madison. Let's keep the focus where it belongs." Something inside me, a dam holding back years of hurt and frustration, finally broke. "My computer business," I repeated, emphasizing each word. "Do you even know what I do? Have you ever once asked about my company? About the systems I've built, or the people I employ?" The abrupt shift in conversation created an awkward silence. Several relatives looked away uncomfortably. Tyler's expression registered surprise, then concern. "Madison, this isn't the time or place," my father said, his voice lowered but sharp. "We're here to celebrate Tyler's achievement." "I'm not trying to take anything away from Tyler," I countered. "I'm incredibly proud of him. But I've spent my entire life being erased in this family, and I'm done accepting it." My mother touched my arm, her smile strained as she glanced around at nearby guests. "You're making a scene, dear. This isn't like you." "That's just it, Mom. You don't know what I'm like. You've never asked. You've never shown the slightest interest in my life or my work." The words flowed now, unstoppable. "Do you know I was featured in Forbes last month? That MIT uses my security protocols as teaching material. That I employ over 200 people." My father's jaw tightened. "You've always been dramatic, Madison. Always needed to be the center of attention. This is exactly why we've sometimes had to focus more on Tyler. He doesn't demand constant validation." The utter unfairness of his statement left me momentarily speechless. Tyler stepped forward, looking uncomfortable. "Dad, that's not really fair." "It's okay, Tyler," my father interrupted. "Your sister has always been sensitive. Let's just move past this and get back to celebrating your accomplishment." Tears pricked at my eyes. Not from sadness, but from pure frustration. When have I ever been the center of attention in this family? Name one time. One single time, when my achievements were celebrated the way Tyler's have been. My mother sighed dramatically. "We've always supported you, Madison. We let you pursue your interests with those computers. We never interfered with your little business ventures." "Little business ventures," I repeated incredulously. "Is that what you think I do?" "Whatever you call it, this behavior is inappropriate," my father said firmly. "If you can't be here supportively without making everything about yourself, perhaps you should leave." I felt a presence beside me, James, who had been observing the exchange from a respectful distance, now stood at my shoulder. His expression was professionally neutral, but I recognized the contained anger in his eyes. "Excuse me," he said, his voice calm but carrying. "I don't believe we've been formally introduced to everyone. My name is James Wilson." My mother looked confused by the interruption. Yes, Madison's friend. We met yesterday. Not quite accurate, James corrected politely. I'm the Chief Security Officer for SecureTech Solutions, where Ms. Taylor serves as founder and CEO. A small crowd had gathered now, drawn by the tension in our family circle. James continued, his tone conversational, but clear enough to be heard by those nearby. Our company currently provides cybersecurity services to 37 Fortune 500 companies, 15 federal agencies, including the Department of Defense, and 11 international governments. Last year, we prevented what the FBI director called the most sophisticated attack on American infrastructure ever attempted. Ms. Taylor's encryption protocols are currently protecting communications for military personnel in active combat zones. My relatives stared in evident shock. James continued smoothly. In addition to her business accomplishments, Ms. Taylor personally funds full scholarships for young women in STEM fields, 37 last year alone. Her mentorship program has helped over 200 underprivileged students enter the technology sector. She was named one of Time magazine's 100 most influential people last year, and her TED Talk on ethical technology has been viewed 11 million times. The stunned silence that followed was broken by my cousin Derek's whispered, "Holy shit, Maddie." James turned to my parents directly. I've had the privilege of working with your daughter for 5 years. In that time, I've seen her refuse acquisition offers exceeding 9 figures, because she prioritizes security over profit. I've watched her work 20-hour days during crises to protect her clients. I've observed her leadership during international cybersecurity emergencies that never made the news because her team prevented them from becoming catastrophes. He paused, his expression still professionally courteous. So when you refer to her little computer business, I find myself wondering if we're talking about the same person. My mother's face had gone pale. My father looked stunned, his mouth opening and closing without producing words. Several relatives were surreptitiously typing on their phones, undoubtedly searching my name to verify what they'd just heard. The uncomfortable silence stretched until Tyler stepped forward. I had no idea, Madison. Why haven't you ever told us about any of this? The simple question broke something in me. I tried, Tyler. 4 years, I tried. I sent articles, awards, announcements. I called with news. But no one ever seemed interested. Tyler looked genuinely perplexed, then turned to our parents. Is that true? Did you know all this about Madison's company? My father cleared his throat. Well, we knew she was doing well with her technology work. But she's always been so private about the details. Private? I couldn't help but laugh. I've been featured in Business Insider, Forbes, and the Wall Street Journal. My details are literally public knowledge. My Aunt Caroline approached, her expression sheepish. I just looked you up on my phone, Madison. There are hundreds of articles about you and your company. Why on earth haven't you ever mentioned any of this? I have mentioned it, I said quietly. No one was listening. The realization dawning on my relatives' faces might have been satisfying under different circumstances. Instead, it just felt hollow, recognition coming not from genuine interest in me, but from public validation they couldn't ignore. Tyler reached out, touching my arm hesitantly. I'm really sorry, Madison. I had no idea. I've always thought you were smart, but this is incredible. I should have asked more questions, paid more attention. His sincerity caught me off guard. For the first time, my brother was seeing me, really seeing me. The irony wasn't lost on me that it took James's intervention for that to happen. My father had regained his composure, his expression now uncomfortable but thoughtful. Madison, perhaps we've underestimated the scope of your work. That's an understatement, Dad. My mother stepped forward, her voice uncharacteristically uncertain. Why didn't you make us understand how important your work is? The question revealed so much about our fundamental disconnect. In her mind, the failure was mine, for not making my accomplishments impossible to ignore, for not forcing them to take notice. It shouldn't take a public introduction by my CSO for my own parents to know what I do, I replied quietly. It shouldn't take media coverage and financial success to make my achievements worth acknowledging. The truth of my words seemed to land with unexpected weight. For perhaps the first time, I saw genuine reflection in my parents' expressions. The dawning realization that they'd been blind to a major part of my life not through my secrecy, but through their own disinterest. Around us, the reception continued, other families celebrating, laughing, taking photos, while our small group stood in a bubble of uncomfortable reckoning. Several of my relatives drifted away, processing this new information about the cousin and niece they'd so casually dismissed. Others lingered, suddenly interested in the family member they'd overlooked for years. Tyler broke the tension, turning to James with genuine curiosity. I'd like to hear more about what my sister does, if you don't mind. It sounds like I've missed a lot. As James began explaining our company's work in terms accessible to a non-technical person, I caught his eye briefly. The slight nod he gave me conveyed his understanding. This moment wasn't just about setting the record straight. It was about finally being seen. For the first time in my life, standing in a room meant to celebrate my brother, I wasn't invisible. The sensation was as disorienting as it was validating, like stepping into sunlight after years in shadow. The reception ended with a strange new dynamic between my family and me. Relatives, who had barely acknowledged my existence for years, suddenly wanted to connect on LinkedIn. Cousins who had never asked about my life, beyond polite small talk, were eagerly sharing how they'd always known I was the smart one. The abrupt shift from invisibility to spotlight was jarring, highlighting exactly what I'd been missing all these years. As guests began to depart, Tyler approached, still in his graduation regalia. Do you have time to grab coffee tomorrow before you leave? Just the two of us. The request surprised me. Sure. The hotel has a good cafe. Great. 9 o'clock. When I nodded, he hesitated before adding, I opened your gift, by the way. The watch is incredible. Thank you. You're welcome. You earned it, Tyler. He looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Did I, though? I'm starting to think I've been handed a lot of things you had to fight for. Before I could respond, our parents approached. The awkwardness between us was palpable, a lifetime of patterns disrupted by a single confrontation. We're having a small family dinner at the house, my mother said. Just immediate family. We'd love for you to come. Both of you, she added, glancing at James. Thank you, but we have plans, I replied. It wasn't entirely true, but I needed space to process everything that had happened. I'll see Tyler for coffee tomorrow. My father cleared his throat. Madison, about what happened earlier. Not here, Dad. I gestured to the thinning but still present crowd. Today is about Tyler's accomplishment, remember? He winced at having his own words reflected back to him. Right? Of course. Perhaps we could talk tomorrow as well. I'll think about it, I said, not quite ready to commit to what would inevitably be a difficult conversation. The drive back to the hotel passed in contemplative silence. It wasn't until we were in the elevator that James spoke. I apologize if I overstepped, he said. It wasn't my place to intervene. I shook my head. You didn't overstep. You just told the truth. Sometimes the truth is exactly what's needed, he replied. Though rarely is it comfortable. That night, I sat on the hotel balcony overlooking Boston, the city where I'd built my first computer program and launched my company. The emotional whiplash of the day left me drained yet strangely exhilarated. For the first time, I'd stopped making myself smaller to fit into my family's perception of me. Whether they could adjust their view remained to be seen, but I was done adjusting mine. The next morning, Tyler arrived at the hotel cafe precisely on time, a punctuality he'd never shown in childhood. He'd traded his graduation regalia for casual clothes, though he still wore the watch I'd given him. "I didn't sleep much last night," he admitted after ordering coffee. "I kept thinking about what happened at the reception. About what James said about your company. About what you said regarding trying to tell us. And?" I prompted when he fell silent. "And I realized I don't know my own sister." He met my gaze directly. "I've never asked about your life, Madison." "Not really. I just accepted what Mom and Dad always said, that you were doing computer stuff. That you were private. Self-sufficient." The candor in his voice surprised me. "To be fair, we've never been close." "That's on me too," he acknowledged. "I was so busy enjoying being the golden child that I never questioned why you weren't. It was easier to accept the attention than wonder why it was so unevenly distributed." His self-awareness was unexpected. "I never resented your accomplishments, Tyler. I resented that mine didn't seem to matter. I know that now." He fiddled with his coffee cup. "I looked you up online last night. Read articles about your company. Watched your TED Talk." He shook his head in evident amazement. "My sister is a legitimate tech mogul, and I had no idea. Do you know how messed up that is?" I couldn't help but smile at his phrasing. Tech mogul might be stretching it. The Wall Street Journal literally called you the most influential woman in cybersecurity. That's pretty mogul-like. He leaned forward, earnest now. "I'm really proud of you, Madison. And I'm sorry I never told you that before." His words, so simple yet so profound, touched a place in me I'd protected for years. "Thank you. That means a lot. I'd like to know you better," he continued. "The real you, not the version our parents created in my head. If you're willing to try, that is." "I'd like that," I said, realizing I meant it. We spent the next hour talking more openly than we ever had, about his research, my company, our separate journeys. For the first time, the conversation flowed both ways, with genuine interest on both sides. We weren't the close siblings we might have been with different parenting, but perhaps we could build something authentic now. After saying goodbye to Tyler with a promise to visit when he settled into his new position, I faced my final challenge, the conversation with my parents. I'd agreed to meet them for lunch, with James respectfully offering to handle some work calls during that time to give us privacy. They were already seated when I arrived at the restaurant, both looking unusually nervous. My mother had clearly put extra effort into her appearance, while my father fidgeted with his napkin, a tell from my childhood that he was uncomfortable. "Thank you for coming," my mother began after I sat down. "We weren't sure you would." "I almost didn't," I admitted. My father took a deep breath. "Madison, what happened yesterday was illuminating. And troubling. We had no idea the extent of your accomplishments. That's the problem, Dad. You never asked. You never showed interest. We thought we were respecting your independence," my mother said. "You were always so capable, so self-sufficient. Tyler needed more support, more encouragement. Everyone needs support, Mom. Everyone needs to feel seen and valued, especially by their parents." I kept my voice steady despite the emotion behind my words. "Do you have any idea what it's like to have every achievement dismissed or minimized? To be treated as an afterthought in your own family. My father looked genuinely pained. We never meant to make you feel that way. Impact matters more than intent, I replied. And the impact was that I grew up feeling invisible. A difficult silence fell, broken only when the waiter came to take our orders. After he left, my mother reached across the table, stopping just short of touching my hand. We failed you, she said simply. I don't know if we can fix that. But I'd like to try to do better. The rawness of her admission caught me off guard. My father nodded, adding, we can't change the past. But perhaps we can be more present in your life now. If you'll let us. I studied them, these imperfect people, who had shaped my early years, for better and worse. I can't promise to forget everything. But I'm willing to try for a new beginning. It wasn't forgiveness, exactly. It was a door left cautiously ajar rather than firmly closed. They seemed to understand the distinction, nodding with subdued relief. The weeks following my return home brought unexpected changes. An email from my father asked detailed questions about my company, the first genuine interest he'd ever shown in my work. My mother called to tell me she'd watched my TED Talk and shared it with her book club. Small steps, tentative but real. 3 months later, I took a calculated risk, inviting my family to my company's anniversary gala. It was the first time they would see me in my professional element, surrounded by the world I'd built. To my surprise, they accepted immediately. The night of the gala, I spotted them from across the crowded ballroom, my parents looking somewhat overwhelmed but present, Tyler and his fiancée Rachel beside them. James escorted them to their table, where they sat among tech luminaries and government officials. During my keynote address, I caught my mother dabbing at her eyes. My father watched with an expression I'd never seen directed at me before, unmistakable pride. Afterward, they approached somewhat tentatively. That was remarkable, my father said, his voice rough with emotion. What you've built here is extraordinary, Madison. We had no idea, my mother added, gesturing to the prestigious crowd. All these important people are here because of you. Not just because of me, I corrected. Because of the team we've built. No success is truly solo. I caught the irony of echoing the graduation dean's words, with a very different meaning. The evening wasn't a magical fix for decades of emotional neglect. There were still awkward moments, still evidence of the vast gulf between their world and mine. But there was also effort, genuine, imperfect effort to see me as I truly was. Later, as the gala wound down, I found a quiet moment with James at the bar. Your parents seemed genuinely impressed, he observed. They're trying, I acknowledged. It's something. Family relationships are complicated, he said, watching as Tyler engaged animatedly with one of our security engineers across the room. Sometimes the breakthroughs come from unexpected directions. I nodded, thinking about how my confrontation, at Tyler's graduation, had cracked open possibilities I'd assumed were permanently closed. The pain wasn't gone, some wounds leave permanent scars. But there was movement where there had been stagnation, possibility where there had been resignation. You know, James said thoughtfully, the family you build can be as important as the family you're born into. Looking around the ballroom at my colleagues, my mentees, my friends, this chosen family I'd gathered over the years, I felt a sense of peace that had nothing to do with parental approval. My worth had never depended on my family's recognition of it. My success was valid with or without their acknowledgement. I had built something meaningful despite their indifference, not to spite it. The realization didn't erase the hurt of the past, but it put it in perspective. My parents' failure to see me hadn't diminished my accomplishments. Their newfound recognition didn't magnify them. My value had always been intrinsic, independent of their perception. As I prepare to close this chapter of my story, I'm reminded that healing isn't always about perfect resolution. Sometimes it's about finding peace within the imperfection, about setting boundaries while leaving doors open to possibility. My relationship with my family remains a work in progress, better than before, but still evolving. What I know for certain is this: visibility matters. Being seen, acknowledged, and valued is a fundamental human need. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever felt invisible in your own family or anywhere else, know that your worth exists independent of others' recognition. Build your life anyway. Create your success anyway. Find your people anyway. Have you ever had to stand up for yourself with family or friends who didn't see your true value? What did you learn from that experience? Share your stories in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if this resonated with you. Thank you for listening, for seeing me, and remember, sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is refuse to be invisible.